A Rabbinic Anthology selected by C.G. Montefiore and H.Loewe. Herbert Lowe's introduction is the program to which I appended the part that explains the abbreviations. Continuing 675. Moses Margalith, in his commentary, Pene Moshe has, "Do not desire anxiously to help us, for thou wilt not go out." 2. The application of Psalm 60, verses 9 and 10 is incongruent with destroy, for although verse 11 says God has cast us off, there is no hint of his neutrality. On the contrary, his help is implored in verse 13, and if, according to Margalith, the remark of Bar Kokhba is defiant, he would hardly have cited verse 14. It is probable that the text is corrupt. Several corrections suggest themselves. H.L.'s note. The extract continues, "For 3 years and a half did Hadrian surround Mithar or Elazar of Motaim, sat in sackcloth and ashes, and prayed daily, Sovereign of the universe, take not this day thy judgment seat." Hadrian desired to abandon the siege, but a Samaritan said to him, "Do not depart, for as long as the hen, i.e. Elazar, sits on her brood in sackcloth and ashes, you will not be able to take the city. But I see what needs to be done, and I will deliver the city to you." So he entered the city by means of a drain, and found Elazar standing in prayer. The Samaritan made as though he were whispering in Elazar's ear, but Elazar did not notice him. The citizens saw the Samaritan and brought him to Bar Kokhba and said to him, "Your uncle wishes to betray the city. We have seen this old man conversing with your uncle." Bar Kokhba said to the Samaritan, "What did you say to him, and what did he say to you?" The Samaritan replied, "If I tell you, Hadrian will kill me. If I do not tell you, you will kill me. Better that Hadrian kill me than that you should." So he said, "Elazar told me that he wished to deliver the city to Hadrian." Then Bar Kokhba went to Elazar and asked what the Samaritan had said to him. He answered, "Nothing." "What did you say to him?" "Nothing." So Bar Kokhba trampled him to death. Instantly a heavenly voice went forth, saying, "Woe to the worthless shepherd that leaves the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye his arm shall be cleaned dry up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened." Zechariah 11:17. "Thou hast slain Elazar, the arm of all Israel, and their right eye. Therefore shall thine arm be clean, dried up, and thy right eye utterly darkened." At once Bethar was captured, and Bar Kokhba slain. They brought his head to Hadrian, who asked, "Who slew this man?" A Samaritan said, "It was I." Hadrian said, "Show me his body." He showed it him, and there was a snake entwined round it. Hadrian said, "Had God not slain him, no man could have done so." And he applied the verse of Deuteronomy 32:30, "Except their rock had sold them." The Romans continued the slaughter till horses were plunged in blood to their nostrils, and the bloodstream whirled weights of 40 sa'as till it reached the sea, 40 miles distant. They say that on one stone they found the brains of 300 infants. They found also 3 piles of capsules of phylacteries, each pile weighing 9 sa'as. Simeon b. Gamaliel said, there were in Bethar 500 schools, the smallest of which had not come, less than 500 infants, who said, if the foe come with these styluses, will we march against them and blind them? But sin brought it to pass that the Romans wrapped each child in its scroll and burnt it. And of all the children, I alone survive. And he applied to himself Lamentations 3:51, i.e. alone out of all the daughters of the city, TJ Ta'an 4, section 8, folio 68D, line 43. And see note 6A. H.L. has another note. The style and contents of this passage suggest that it was not written down until some time after the fall of Bethar, so that it was possible for legends to grow up around the historical facts. H.L. Well, a lot of what is listed as historical fact is actually legend itself. Are versions made official, right? 676, Canticles R, 2, section 7, 1 on 2, 7, folio 16a. Archia B. Abba said, if a man said to me, give your life for the sanctification of God's name, I would give it, but only on the condition that I should be killed at once. But the tortures of the time of persecution I could not endure. What was then done? They brought iron balls and made them white hot upon the fire, and put them under the armpits, and so they took their lives. Or they drove pieces of reed under their nails, and so they took their lives. As David said, to thee, O Lord, I lift up my soul. Psalm 25:1. For Asa I lift up, the Midrash reads, Asa, I cause to take, I take away. They let their souls' lives be taken away for the sanctification of the name of God. Canticles R, 2, section 7, 1 on 2, 7, folio 16a. 677, Tanch B. Ke Tabo 24a. Arjanina B. Papa, commenting on Psalm 17:14, from men which are thy hand, AV said, this must be translated differently. Not from men, but, by pun, from those who allow themselves to be slain for the Torah, because the Israelites surrender their lives for the Torah and the sanctification of the name. God makes them a blessing in the world. Tanch B. Ke Tabo 24a. These are also many stories. There are also many stories connected with the capture of Jerusalem in 70 of the Common Era, and with the horrors which followed it. 678, Lamentations R, 145 on 116 and 662. Vespasian filled 3 ships with the great ones of Jerusalem to place them in a Roman house of prostitution. They said, was it not enough that we provoked God in God's sanctuary? Should we also do so outside Palestine? They said to their wives, would you consent to this? They replied, no. The men said, if our wives refuse, how much more should we? Do you think that if we throw ourselves into the sea, we shall come to the life of the world to come? Then God enlightened straightway their eyes by the verse, I will bring them again from the depths of the sea. Psalm 68, verse 22. So then the first man arose and said, shall we forget the name of our God and stretch out our hands to a strange God? Psalm 44:20. And they hurled themselves into the sea. Then the second band arose and said, Yea, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. Psalm 44:22. And they hurled themselves into the sea. Then the third band arose and said, Will not God search this out? For he knows the secrets of the heart. Psalm 44:21. And they hurled themselves into the sea, and the Holy Spirit cried and said, For these things I weep. Lamentations 1:16. Lam R 1:45 on 1:16, 662. Because people who otherwise would have lived a good life committed suicide. But that's not quite the point they're making. 679. Lam R 146 on 116. It happened that 2 children of Zadok the priest, one a youth and one a girl, came into the hands of 2 officers. The one officer went to a harlot and gave the youth to her. The other went to a shopkeeper and exchanged the girl for wine. So were the words of Joel fulfilled. They have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine. Chapter 3, verse 3. After a time, that harlot who had the youth went to a shopkeeper and said to him, Since my youth is like your girl, I would desire that we unite them together, and what comes from them we will have between us. He said yes. So they were fetched and taken together into a house. Then the girl began to weep. The youth said to her, Why do you weep? She replied, How should I not weep, that I, the daughter of the high priest, am to be united to a slave? He said, Whose daughter are you? She said, Zadok the priest. He said, And where, if so, did you live? She said, In the upper marketplace. He said, And what was the sign of your courtyard? She told it to him. He said, Had you a brother or a sister? She said, I had one brother who had a mole on his shoulder, and whenever he came back from school, I used to uncover it and kiss it. He said, If you saw it, would you recognize it? She said, Yes. He uncovered himself, and they recognized one another, and they embraced and kissed each other till their souls departed from them. And the Holy Spirit cried and said, For these things I weep. Lamentations 1:16. Lam R 146 on 116. That's not the least disturbing, right? Because that maybe implies something. Perhaps the story about R. Johanan b. Zakkai is almost too familiar to be omitted here, even though it has some special religious or ethical content. 680 Gen R on 6522, page 741 to 4. When Vespasian came to destroy Jerusalem, he said to them, Fools, why do you seek to destroy this city, to burn the temple? All I want is that you deliver up to me one single bow and arrow, and then I will raise the siege. And they said, As we repelled the first and second attacks, and slew your men, so we will repel the next attack and slay them. When our Johanan heard this, he sent for the men of Jerusalem and said to them, Why would you lay waste this city and burn the temple? All he seeks from you is one bow and arrow, and then he will retire. They replied, As we repelled the first 2 attacks and killed the soldiers, so we will go now out against him and kill him. Vespasian had men who watched beside the walls, and whatever they heard, they wrote upon arrows and threw them over the wall, so that they told Vespasian that our Johanan was a friend of the emperor. When our Johanan urged them for 3 days, and they refused, he called his disciples Eleazar and Joshua, and said, Up and carry me out of the city. Make a coffin, and I will sleep in it. They did so, and Eleazar took up one side and Joshua the other. And at the setting of the sun they brought it to the gates of Jerusalem, and the gatekeeper said, What is this? They said, A corpse is in it. And, as you know, a corpse must not be left in the city overnight. As they said, If it be a corpse, carry it forth. So they carried him forth, and brought him to Vespasian. Then they opened the coffin, and he stood before Vespasian. He said, Are you Johanan B. Zakkai? What shall I give you? He replied, All I ask of you is that I may go to Judgme and teach my disciples there, and fix a place of prayer there, and carry out all the commandments. He answered, Go, and all that it pleases you to do, there do. ABRN 1, 4, 11b to 12a. I think I accidentally gave the listing when I started the verse of the next one, but there are many stories about individual martyrs. 681 Gen R on 6522, the page 741 to 744. In the hour when the enemy had captured Jerusalem and sought to enter the temple, they said, Let an Israelite enter first. So they said to Joseph, Go in, and what you bring out shall be yours. He went in and brought out the golden candlestick. They said to him, This is no object which a private person can use. Go in a second time, and what you bring out shall be yours. But this second time he refused to go in. Phinehas said that they offered him a remission of tax for 3 years, but he still refused. He said, Is it not enough that I have provoked my God once, that I should provoke him a second time? What did they do? They put him on a carpenter's sawing jack and sawed his body. He kept crying out, Woe, woe, that I have provoked my Maker. And Jechem of Tezerah, who was the nephew of Joseph B. Joezer, rode on a horse and came past the beam on which Joseph was to be hung. And it was the Sabbath day. Then Jechem said to Joseph, Behold the horse on which my master lets me ride, and behold the horse on which your master makes you ride. Joseph said, If such things happen to those who provoke him, how much better things shall happen to those who do his will. Then Jechem said, Did any man ever do his will more than you? Then Joseph said, If such things as what is happening to me happen to those who do his will, how much worse things will happen to those who provoke him. The word entered into Jechem's soul like the poison of a snake. He went and executed upon himself all the 4 kinds of death which the court can inflict: stoning, burning, decapitation, and strangling. For he brought a beam and fastened it on the ground, and tied a cord to it, and placed wood on the ground, and made a fence of stones around the wood, put brushwood under the stones, and stuck a sword in the middle of the circle, and kindled a fire under the wood which was under the stones, and hanged himself on the beam, and strangled himself. The fire broke the beam, he fell into the fire, and then upon the sword, and the wall collapsed, and he was burnt. Then, as he died, Joseph B. Joezer saw the bed of Jechem flying aloft into the air, and he said, By a little space of time, Jechem has entered even before me into paradise. Gen R 6522, page 741 to 744. Now, You don't find Islamic support of any type of suicide, but what happened with this Zionist did influence the so-called Islamic terrorist later. And this idea that people can, it's like, well, no, well, some ancient Egyptians said this, but yeah, we're not promoting that And anyways, H.L., this passage must refer to the Maccabean times, for Joseph ben Joezer of Tizeradah, Jacob's uncle, lived about 200 to 162 BCE. See Abbott 1:4. Jacob is said to have been Alchemus, the Hellenizer, 1 Maccabees 7:6, whom Josephus, Antiquities 12, chapter 9, section 7, 385, calls Iachimos for Eliakim, 2 Kings 18:18, equivalent to Jehoiakim. Travers Herford, commentary on both and location, raises the question whether Joseph perished in 162 BCE in the massacre perpetuated by Alchemus, 1 Maccabees 7:16, HL 682 ABRN, verse 1, 3857b. When they seized R. Simeon B. Gamaliel and R. Ishmael and took them to be executed, Simeon was dazed and said to Ishmael, "Woe to us! We are to be killed, like profaners of the Sabbath, or idolaters, or incestuous persons, or murderers." Then Ishmael said, "May I say something?" He said, "Speak." Ishmael said, "Perhaps, when you sat in your house, poor people came, and they stood outside, and you did not let them in and give them food." Then Simeon said, "I swear to heaven, I never did so. For I kept watchers before my house, that they should at once bring in any poor who came to my door. And the poor ate and drank and blessed the name of God." Then Ishmael said, "Perhaps, when you sat upon the temple hill and taught, and all the bands of the Israelites were before you, your mind was puffed up." Then Simeon said, "My brother, a man must be prepared to receive his fate." Each besought the executioner to let him die first. One said, "I am a priest, son of a high priest. Let me die first, that I shall not see the death of my friend." The other said, "I am a prince, the son of a prince. Let me die first." The executioner said, "Draw lots." The lot fell on Simeon, and the executioner cut off his head. Ishmael took it up and put it on his bosom, and wept and cried, "Holy mouth, faithful mouth, mouth that brought forth precious stones, who has rolled you in the dust and filled your tongue with ashes? For you was it said, 'Awake, O sword, against my friend.'" Zechariah 13:7. He had not finished the words when his head fell. ABRN, verse 1, 3857b, 500. 683. R. Chanina is usually called Hananiah. See note 460. See the note to selection 460. But 683 AB, Czar 17b to 18a, RT, page 374, 375. When R. Chanina B. Turadion was arrested, they asked him, "Why did you occupy yourself with the study of the law?" He answered, "Because God commanded me to do so." Then they sentenced him to be burnt alive. He carried a scroll of the law in his bosom. Then they took him and wrapped the scroll round him, and heaped bundles of willow wood about him, and set fire to them. Then they took tufts of wool, soaked them in water, and laid them on his heart. that he might not die quickly. Then his daughter said, Father, that I should have to see you thus. He replied, If I were to be burnt alone, it would have been hard for me. But now that the scroll of the law is being burnt with me, he who will avenge his own humiliation in the burning of the scroll will also avenge my humiliation. His disciples said to him, What do you see? He replied, The sheets of the scroll are being burnt, and the letters are flying up to heaven. The idea is that the divine word has an indestructible existence of its own, independent of the material to which it is temporarily attached. Then they said to him, Open your mouth that the fire may enter into it. The object was that his tortures should be shortened. He replied, It is better that he who gave me my soul should take it rather than that I should break the rule. Let no man do himself an injury, or let no man do violence to himself. Contrary to the previous narrations that we've gone over that talk about that. Then the executioner said to himself, Master, if I increase the flame and remove the tufts of wool from your heart, will you bring me into the life of the world to come? Chanina replied, Yes, I will. He said, Swear it to me. Then Chanina swore it. At once the executioner increased the flame and removed the tufts of wool from his heart, and his soul departed quickly. Then the executioner himself leaped into the fire. Then a heavenly voice was heard to say, R. Chanina, B. Teradian, and the executioner are appointed for the life of the world to come. And Rabbi wept and said, Some attain the world to come in an hour, and some win it only after many years. A.B. Zar, 17b to 18a, CRT, page 374 and 375. And that practice of immolation in the fire in Eurasia, that was probably the most common area where that was done. And now the Zionist movement is destroying texts with variations of the Bible, and books that weren't included but could have been included have been destroyed amongst their wars. The shortest and perhaps oldest version of R. Akiba's Martyrdom runs thus: 684, TJ Bearer 9, section 7, folio 14b, line 59, TJ Soth 5, section 7, folio 20c, line 53. When Akiba was being tortured, the hour for saying the Shema arrived. He said it and smiled. The Roman officer called out, Old man, art thou a sorcerer, or dost thou mock at thy sufferings, that thou smilest in the midst of thy pains? Neither, replied Akiba, but all my life, when I said the words, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and might, Lord being a mistranslation of God as a verb and noun, I was saddened, for I thought, when shall I be able to fulfill the command? I have loved God with all my heart and with all my possessions, might, but how to love him with all my soul, i.e. life, was not assured to me. Now that I am giving my life, and that the hour for saying the Shema has come, and my resolution remains firm, should I not laugh? And as he spoke, his soul departed. T.J. Bearer 9, section 7, folio 14b, line 59. See T.J. Soth 5, section 7, folio 20c, line 53. It must not, however, be supposed that the rabbis sought to make ordinary life too hard, or that they taught that, in order to obtain entrance into the life to come, God demanded more of man than the ordinary man could render. God gives in no proportion to what he demands. The last of the next three passages is often repeated. 685, numbers R, Penachos, 21, 22, see selections 10 and 689. When God gives, he gives according to his power. When he demands according to our power. Numbers R, Penachos, 21, 22, see 10 and 689, 686. Exodus R, Mishpathim, 32:5. God says to Israel, for all the wonders and mighty deeds which I have wrought for you, the only reward I ask is that you should honor me as my children and call me your father. Exodus R, Mishpathim, 32:5. 687. San 81a. When R. Gamaliel read the verse in Ezekiel 18:19, when the Son has done that which is lawful and right, and has kept all my statutes, and has done them, he shall surely live. He was wont to weep, for he said, shall only he who has kept all God's statutes live, not he who does any one of them. But Akiba said to him, it says, defile not yourselves in all these things. Leviticus 18:24. Here all means in any one of these things, and so in Ezekiel, Sin 81a. Interesting are the following: 688, Midrash Psalm on 137, 5, 262b, finish section 6, see selection 1477. After the temple was destroyed, the separated ones, Parushim, increased in Israel. They ate no meat and drank no wine. Then our Joshua went to them and said, why do you eat no meat and drink no wine? They said, how can we eat meat when it was offered daily on the altar, or drink wine when it was poured out on it? And now all this has ceased. So they're kind of like the Krishnatarian eaters, right? He said to them, in that case, we ought to eat no figs and grapes, for they were offered as firstlings, and we ought to eat no bread, because they were used to bring 2 loaves on the Pentecost, and the showbread on every Sabbath, and we ought to drink no water, for there was a libation of water at the Feast of Tabernacles. They were silent. He said, not to mourn at all is impossible. To mourn more than is adequate is also not possible. For our Joshua had said before, only such decrees may be issued which the majority of the community can endure. See note 20b. Now, it should be what everybody can endure. I mean, those who can afford it do this, those sort of conditions attached. But anybody with the means, that they carry them out, right? 20b, Midrash Psalm on 137, 5, 262b, the finish, section 6, see selection 1477. Parushim would not necessarily mean Pharisees, see selection 719. One authority renders, they who practiced self-restraint. Another, the abstemious, or one might say the ascetics. 689, Tunch, Shemot, section 25, folio 90b, see selections 10 and 685. God's voice went forth to each one in Israel according to his powers of obedience. The elders heard the voice according to their capacity, the adolescents, the youths, the boys, the sucklings, each according to his capacity, the women too according to their capacity, and also Moses according to his capacity. For it says, Moses kept speaking, and God would answer him with the voice, Exodus 19:19, i.e. with that voice which Moses was able to hear. Tunch, Shemot 25, 90b, C, selections 10 and 685.